All right, let's talk about something pretty incredible. For over 3,000 years, one civilization poured its greatest minds, its huge resources, and its deepest beliefs into a single, unbelievably ambitious goal: to conquer death. Today, we're going to unpack the ancient Egyptian guide to the afterlife, a kind of blueprint for eternity that they perfected over millennia.
It's a great question, right? But here's the thing. They weren't obsessed with death. Not at all. They were obsessed with life. So much so that they came up with this elaborate plan to make it last forever. So their focus wasn't morbid. It was this massive, incredible quest for immortality. So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll follow their journey step by step, starting with their core beliefs. Then we'll get into the physical stuff, preparing the body and the tomb. After that, we'll explore the soul's dangerous journey. And finally, we'll look at the amazing legacy all this hard work left behind.
Okay, so what was the game plan? Well, the first thing you have to understand is how the Egyptians saw the afterlife. It wasn't some strange, cloudy place up in the sky. Nope, it was something way more familiar.
They imagined this perfect paradise where you could still eat, drink, and hang out with your family. Basically all the best parts of life on Earth, but forever. But here's the catch. Death wasn't the final destination. It was a dangerous transition, this risky journey filled with monsters and obstacles that could totally stop your soul from getting there. And that meant you had to prepare, meticulously.
So that brings us to the first and maybe the most critical piece of their plan, the body itself. To the Egyptians, your physical body was like an anchor for your soul in the afterlife. If the body decayed, well, the soul was lost forever. Game over.
And this, of course, is where mummification comes in. This was so much more than just a burial custom. It was the sacred, high-tech, and absolutely essential process. We're talking about a 70-day-long ritual designed to completely stop decay and create an eternal home for the spirit. Without a preserved body, there was just no hope for an afterlife. Now, what's really fascinating here is how systematic it all was. First, priests would remove the internal organs that decay quickly. But, and this is key, they left the heart. Why? Because they believed it was the center of intelligence and emotion, kind of like the hard drive you'd need for your final judgment. Then, the body was packed in a natural salt called natron to completely dry it out for weeks. Finally, it was cleaned, treated with oils, and wrapped in hundreds of yards of linen.
An eternal body is a great start, but hey, it needs an eternal home, right? And this wasn't just a grave, it was a permanent residence, a palace for the soul that was literally designed to last for millions of years.
And this is where the tomb's design gets really clever. It had two parts. Deep inside, you had the sealed burial chamber, like a vault, to protect the mummy and all its stuff. But then there was a public-facing part, a chapel. This is where living relatives and priests could come to perform rituals and leave offerings of food and drink to keep the person's spirit going. It was a way to make sure their name would live on.
You know, what's amazing is just how practical the Egyptians were. They knew that eventually their family might stop visiting, or a priesthood might just fall apart. So they had a backup plan. They covered the tomb walls with magical pictures of offerings and spells. The idea was that these images could magically substitute for the real thing, creating a kind of self-sustaining afterlife engine, just in case.
So, with the body safe and the tomb fully stocked, the focus shifts to the soul's epic journey. The physical world was all set, now it was time to face the spiritual one. And for that, you were going to need a map and a book of cheat codes.
And over thousands of years, you can actually see how these magical guidebooks evolved. At first, in the Old Kingdom, only pharaohs got these spells, the pyramid texts carved right into their pyramids. Later, in the Middle Kingdom, nobles could get them written on their coffins. By the New Kingdom, pretty much anyone who could afford it could have their own personalized scroll, what we call the Book of the Dead, to take with them.
This quote really just nails it. These texts weren't simply prayers, they were instructions. They had all the passwords to get past demonic gatekeepers, spells to turn into powerful animals if you needed to, and all the right answers to give the gods during that final test. It was literally a step-by-step guide to survival.
So, after navigating all those dangers, after reciting all the right spells, the soul would finally arrive at the Hall of Judgment. This was it, the final terrifying test, and absolutely everything depended on what happened in this one moment. Here, before the god Osiris, your heart, the record of every single thing you did in life, was placed on one side of a scale. On the other side, the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. If your heart was heavy with bad deeds, it would outweigh the feather, and your soul would be eaten by a terrifying monster. But if you had lived a good life, your heart would be light, the scales would balance, and you'd be welcomed into eternal paradise.
So when you look back at these thousands of years of effort, this massive investment in eternity, you have to ask yourself, did it work? Well, not exactly in the way they planned, but the result was something just as powerful, if not more so. Think about it. Everything they did, from perfecting mummification to building the pyramids, from carving spells into stone to painting scenes of everyday life, it was all for the next world. But in doing all that, they created this unbelievable record of their world. They built things to last forever, and they succeeded beyond their wildest dreams.
And that, right there, is the beautiful irony of it all. The ancient Egyptians poured all of their energy into securing an individual, eternal future for themselves. And in that deeply personal quest, they achieved a kind of collective immortality. They made sure that their civilization, their beliefs, and their stories would echo through history, making them truly and forever unforgettable.